My parents exploited me financially for years, even forging credit cards in my name for gambling. When I found out, I pressed charges and testified, costing them prison time and destroying our family. I never thought a single text message could destroy everything I believed about my family. But on a rainy Thursday evening in March, while I was grading papers at my kitchen table, my phone lit up with a notification that would change my life forever. The message was from my younger brother Tyler, who rarely texted me anything more substantial than memes or complaints about his part-time job at the local electronics store. But this time, instead of a funny video, there was a voice recording attached. The preview showed it was over 3 minutes long, which was unusual for Tyler's typically brief communications. I almost ignored it, thinking it was probably him venting about his manager again, but something made me press play. The moment I heard my stepmother Janet's voice, my stomach dropped like I'd been punched. "Honestly, Sarah thinks she's so smart with her little teaching job," Janet's voice crackled through my phone speaker. "But she's basically our personal bank account at this point. It's almost too easy." My hands started shaking as I turned up the volume. The recording was clearly accidental. I could hear the muffled sounds of movement, like someone had pocket-dialed while their phone was recording. But the conversation was crystal clear. "I mean, she pays for everything without even asking questions," my father's voice joined in, followed by his familiar chuckle. "The mortgage, the car payments, even Tyler's college fund. She's so desperate to be the good daughter that she'll bankrupt herself to make us happy." The blood drained from my face. I'd been helping them financially for over 6 years, ever since I'd gotten my first teaching position. Every month, I sent them $1,800 to help with what they called temporary setbacks from Dad's construction business. I'd skipped vacations, driven my car until it literally died, and lived in a studio apartment that barely fit my bed, all so I could help my family stay afloat. "The best part," Janet continued, and I could hear the smile in her voice, "is that she actually thinks we're grateful. She has no idea we laugh about it every time she sends money. God, she's pathetic." Tyler's voice chimed in, and hearing my little brother, the one I'd helped raise after our mom died when he was 12, made my chest feel like it was caving in. "She's such a pushover. Remember when she gave me that extra $1,000 for textbooks last semester? I spent it on a new gaming setup. She never even asked for receipts." More laughter. My father's voice again. "Sarah's always been the weak one. Even when she was little, she'd do anything to avoid conflict. That's why this works so well. She's too scared to say no to us. Plus," Janet added, "if she ever did try to cut us off, we'd just guilt-trip her about abandoning family. She's got that whole martyr complex going on. It's like having our own personal ATM that never runs out of money." The recording cut off abruptly, and I sat in my kitchen staring at my phone screen in complete silence. The rain outside seemed louder now, drumming against my windows like an accusation. 6 years. 6 years of sacrificing my own financial stability, my own dreams, my own future, for people who saw me as nothing more than a convenient source of income. I scrolled up to see Tyler's follow-up message, sent just minutes after the recording. "Shit, sorry, that was an accident. Can you delete that? Phone was in my pocket during dinner." But it was too late. I'd heard everything. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt something I'd never experienced when it came to my family: pure, crystalline anger. I'd always been the responsible one. When Mom died of cancer when I was 22, I'd stepped up to help Dad raise Tyler. When Dad's construction business started struggling, I'd offered to help with bills. When Janet came into the picture 3 years later and they wanted to buy a bigger house, I'd co-signed the mortgage and committed to helping with payments. Every financial crisis, every unexpected expense, every emergency that seemed to coincidentally occur right after I got paid, I'd been there with my checkbook and my naive belief that this was what family meant. But sitting in my tiny apartment, listening to their voices mock my generosity and call me pathetic, I realized I'd been living a lie. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as a resource to be exploited. My phone buzzed again. "Tyler, Sarah, did you listen to that? Please don't be weird about it. You know how Dad and Janet get when they're drinking." I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. "I heard it." The response came immediately. "Look, they didn't mean it like that. They're just stressed about money stuff. You know they appreciate everything you do." But I was done being gaslit. I was done making excuses for people who clearly had no respect for me. I was done being their personal ATM. I didn't respond to Tyler's message. Instead, I opened my laptop and began doing something I should have done years ago. I started documenting everything. Over the next 3 days, I compiled a comprehensive record of every financial transaction I'd made for my family since I'd started teaching. Bank statements, Venmo transfers, Cash App payments, even the handwritten IOUs that had never been repaid. What I discovered made me physically sick. In 6 years, I had given my family $156,000. The number sat on my computer screen like an accusation. $156,000. Money that could have paid off my student loans, bought me a decent car, put a down payment on a house, or funded the master's degree I'd been putting off because I couldn't afford it. I created a spreadsheet with dates, amounts, and the reasons they'd given for needing money. The patterns were nauseating. Dad's business emergencies always seemed to coincide with major sporting events times when I later learned he'd been gambling. Janet's medical expenses lined up perfectly with her social media posts showing off new clothes and spa days. Tyler's educational costs happened right before he'd post pictures of expensive electronics or weekend trips with friends. But the most damning evidence was in the timing. Every single request for money came within 48 hours of my paycheck. They'd been monitoring my pay schedule, timing their crises to hit when they knew I'd have cash available. I felt like I was going to throw up. How had I been so blind? How had I missed such obvious manipulation? My phone rang. Dad's name appeared on the screen, and for the first time in my life, I let it go to voicemail. Then Janet called, then Tyler. I ignored them all. The voicemail from Dad was exactly what I expected. "Hey honey, just checking in. Haven't heard from you in a few days. Also, the mortgage payment is due Monday and we're running a little short this month. Can you send the usual amount? Love you." The casual tone, the assumption that I'd just hand over money without question, the complete lack of acknowledgement of what Tyler had accidentally revealed it, was like they thought I was too stupid to put the pieces together. I called in sick to work on Friday and spent the entire day at the bank. I opened a new checking account that my family had no knowledge of and transferred most of my savings. I changed my direct deposit information. I updated all my automatic payments. I was building a financial fortress that they couldn't breach. That evening, I drove to my best friend Marcus's house. I'd been friends with Marcus since college, and he was one of the few people who'd ever questioned my family's constant financial needs. I'd always defended them, making excuses about temporary hardships and family loyalty. Now, I felt like an idiot for not listening to him. "I need to show you something," I said, pulling up the recording on my phone. Marcus listened to the entire thing without interruption, his expression growing darker with each passing second. When it finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Sarah," he said finally, "I've been watching them bleed you dry for years. I've tried to bring it up, but you always shut me down. How much money are we talking about here?" I showed him the spreadsheet. His reaction was immediate and visceral. "Jesus Christ, Sarah, this is financial abuse. This is systematic exploitation. You could have bought a house with that money. You could have paid off your loans and had money left over." Hearing someone else validate what I was feeling gave me strength. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't being selfish. I was being abused, and it was time to stop it. "What are you going to do?" Marcus asked. "I'm going to cut them off completely," I said. "No more money, no more bailouts, no more enabling. They're going to lose their minds," he warned. "Good," I replied. "Let them." Monday morning arrived with the subtlety of a freight train. My phone started buzzing at 7 a.m. with increasingly frantic messages from Janet. "Sarah, the mortgage payment was due today and it didn't go through. Did you forget to send it?" "Sarah, call me back immediately. This is urgent. I don't know what's going on with you, but this is not the time for games. We need that money today." I was in the middle of teaching my second period English class when my phone started ringing. Dad's name flashed on the screen. I declined the call and continued discussing symbolism in The Great Gatsby with my sophomores. The irony wasn't lost on me here. I was teaching about the corruption of the American dream while living my own version of financial manipulation. By lunch, I had 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. The tone had escalated from confusion to anger to outright panic. Janet's latest message read, "If you don't call me back in the next hour, I'm driving to your school. This is ridiculous." I finally responded with a single text, I won't be sending money anymore. Please don't contact me at work. My phone immediately rang. I declined the call. It rang again, declined, again, declined. Then the texts started flooding in. What do you mean you won't be sending money? This is our house payment. Sarah, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this is not who you are. Your father is having chest pains from the stress. Do you want him to have a heart attack? We raised you better than this. Family doesn't abandon family. You're being incredibly selfish. We've always been there for you. That last message made me laugh out loud in my empty classroom. Always been there for me? When had they ever been there for me? When Mom was dying and I was juggling college classes with hospital visits. When I was working 2 jobs to pay for my teaching certification. When I was struggling with depression after Mom's death and needed emotional support, they'd been there when they needed money. That was it. I screenshotted every message and added them to my documentation file. Their mask was slipping, and I was capturing every moment of it. After school, I found Janet waiting by my car in the parking lot. She looked haggard, her usually perfect hair disheveled and her makeup smudged. The moment she saw me, she launched into a performance worthy of an Oscar. "Sarah, thank God," she said, rushing toward me with tears streaming down her face. "I've been so worried. Are you having some kind of breakdown? This isn't like you at all." I unlocked my car and put my bag in the backseat, not responding to her dramatics. "Honey, I know you're upset about something, but we can work through this. We're family. We love you so much, and we're just trying to understand what's wrong." I turned to face her, and for the first time in years, I looked at Janet without the filter of family obligation. She was a woman who'd married my grieving father and immediately started treating me like a personal bank account. She'd never worked a day in our relationship, spending her time shopping and getting spa treatments while I worked overtime to fund her lifestyle. "I heard the recording, Janet," I said calmly. The change in her expression was instantaneous. The fake tears dried up, the concerned mask slipped, and for just a moment I saw the real Janet calculating, cold, and angry at being caught. "What recording?" she asked, but her voice had lost its trembling quality. "The one where you called me pathetic, where you and Dad laughed about how easy it is to manipulate me. Where you talked about me like I'm your personal ATM." Janet's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, fear, anger, and finally, desperate calculation. "Sarah, we were just venting. You know how people say things they don't mean when they're stressed. We love you. Everything we said was just. We were frustrated about money and we said some things we didn't mean." "Which part didn't you mean?" I asked. "The part where you called me pathetic? The part where you said I was too weak to say no? Or the part where you admitted you spend my money on things you want instead of what you claim you need it for?" Janet's composure cracked completely. "You're taking this way out of context. We've always appreciated everything you do. But you have to understand, we depend on you. We've built our lives around your help. You can't just abandon us." "Watch me," I said, getting into my car. She grabbed my door handle as I tried to close it. "Sarah, please, the house payment is due. If we don't pay it, we could lose everything. Is that what you want? Do you want your family to be homeless?" I looked at her for a long moment. "Janet, you've had 6 years to figure out how to pay your own bills. You've had 6 years to get a job, to budget properly, to live within your means. Instead, you chose to treat me like a piggy bank. That's not my problem anymore." I closed the door and drove away, leaving her standing in the parking lot. In my rearview mirror, I could see her pulling out her phone, probably calling Dad to report that their cash cow was officially out of the barn. If I thought Janet's parking lot ambush was bad, I was completely unprepared for what came next. By the time I got home, my family had launched a full-scale campaign to get me back in line. My phone was buzzing constantly with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. When I finally answered one, thinking it might be work-related, I heard my Aunt Linda's voice. "Sarah, honey, your father called me in tears. He's so worried about you. He thinks you might be having some kind of mental health crisis. Are you okay?" I almost laughed. Of course they'd gone with the Sarahs having a breakdown narrative. It was perfect. It explained my sudden refusal to hand over money while painting them as the concerned, loving family dealing with a troubled daughter. "I'm fine, Aunt Linda. Did Dad mention the recording where they called me pathetic and laughed about how easy it is to manipulate me?" The silence on the other end of the line was telling. "What recording, honey?" "Ask him about it," I said, and hung up. Over the next few hours, I received calls from my Uncle Bob, my cousin Jennifer, my father's business partner, and even my old high school guidance counselor. Each conversation followed the same pattern. They'd been contacted by my family, told I was having a mental health crisis, and asked to reach out to me. The manipulation was breathtaking in its scope. They'd activated their entire network, spinning a story that painted me as unstable while positioning themselves as the victims of my sudden breakdown. But the most infuriating call came from Tyler. "Sarah, what the hell is wrong with you?" he said without preamble. "Dad's having panic attacks, Janet's crying constantly, and you're just, what, ignoring us over some stupid recording." That stupid recording revealed 6 years of lies, Tyler. 6 years of you all laughing at me behind my back while I sacrificed my own financial stability to support you. "Oh, come on," he scoffed. "So we vented a little bit. Big deal. You know we appreciate everything you do, but you're being ridiculous. We need that money. I need that money. Do you want me to drop out of college?" The entitlement in his voice was staggering. "Tyler, I've given you over $30,000 in the past 3 years, money that was supposed to go to tuition and books and living expenses. How much of that actually went to your education?" Silence. "How much, Tyler?" "That's not the point," he said finally. "The point is that we're family, and family takes care of each other. You can't just abandon us because your feelings got hurt." "My feelings got hurt?" I repeated. "Tyler, you called me pathetic. You bragged about lying to me about textbook costs. You laughed about how easy it is to manipulate me. That's not hurt feelings, that's discovering that my own family sees me as nothing more than a source of income. Look, I'm sorry about what we said, okay? But you're overreacting. We were just blowing off steam. It doesn't mean we don't love you." "If this is what your love looks like, I don't want it," I said, and hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the times I'd chosen to help them instead of helping myself. The vacation to Europe I'd canceled when Dad needed money for a business emergency. The car I'd driven until it literally died because I couldn't afford repairs after sending them my savings. The master's degree I'd put off because I couldn't afford the tuition that would have cost less than what I'd given them in a single year. I'd been so focused on being the good daughter that I'd forgotten to be good to myself. The next morning, I called in sick to work again and spent the day building my case. If my family wanted to paint me as unstable, I was going to arm myself with facts. I started with bank records, printing out 6 years of statements, and highlighting every transfer to my family members. The visual impact was overwhelming, page after page of highlighted transactions, each one representing a sacrifice I'd made for people who saw me as a joke. Next, I compiled text messages. I'd never been good about deleting conversations, which turned out to be a blessing. I had years of messages showing the patterns of manipulation, the timing of requests, the escalating urgency, the guilt trips when I'd occasionally hesitated to send money. One conversation from the previous year was particularly damning. Janet had texted me about a medical emergency that required $2,000 immediately. I'd sent the money within an hour, worried about her health. 3 days later, she'd posted Instagram photos from an expensive spa weekend, tagged with "treat yourself" and self-care. I screenshotted everything and organized it chronologically. The pattern was undeniable. Every request for money was followed by evidence of frivolous spending on social media. But the most damning evidence came from Tyler's Venmo account, which he'd foolishly left public. I could see every transaction he'd made, and it told a story that made me physically ill. The $1,000 I'd sent for textbooks in September had been immediately transferred to his friend Jake with the note, "Gaming Setup Fund." The $500 for lab fees in October had gone to a liquor store. The $800 for emergency car repairs in November had been spent at Best Buy. I documented everything, creating a comprehensive timeline of lies and manipulation. By the end of the day, I had a file that would make any prosecutor weep with joy. That evening, Marcus came over to check on me. He found me surrounded by printed bank statements and screenshots, looking like a detective investigating a crime. "Jesus, Sarah," he said, surveying the evidence spread across my dining room table. "This is worse than I thought." "It's 6 years of systematic fraud," I said. "They've been lying to me about everything. Every emergency, every crisis, every desperate need for money, it was all fake." Marcus picked up one of the bank statements, shaking his head as he saw the highlighted transactions. "Have you added it all up?" $156,000, I said. "In 6 years, I've given them $156,000. He sat down heavily in one of my chairs. "Sarah, that's a house." That's a down payment on a really nice house, plus money left over for a new car. I know. That's your entire future. Your retirement, your security, your dreams, they've stolen all of it. I know. What are you going to do? I looked at the evidence surrounding me, 6 years of my life reduced to bank statements and screenshots. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who they really are. 3 days later, I was checking my credit report when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. There were 2 credit card applications in my name that I'd never submitted. Both had been approved, with cards mailed to my father's address. I immediately called the credit card companies, my hands shaking as I explained the situation. The first representative was sympathetic but matter-of-fact. "Ma'am, it looks like these applications were submitted online using your social security number and personal information. The cards were activated and have been used for several purchases." "What kind of purchases?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Let me see. There's a charge for $1,200 at a casino in Atlantic City, several charges at restaurants and gas stations, and an $800 charge at an electronics store." I felt sick. They hadn't just been manipulating me into giving them money, they'd been stealing my identity to get more. The second credit card told a similar story. Janet had apparently gone on a shopping spree, charging over $2,000 in clothes and spa treatments to a card in my name. I spent the entire morning on the phone with credit card companies, filing fraud reports and getting the cards canceled. But the damage was done. My credit score had taken a hit, and I was now responsible for disputing thousands of dollars in fraudulent charges. This wasn't just financial manipulation anymore. This was identity theft. This was a federal crime. I called the police. Officer Martinez was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She listened to my story without interruption, occasionally taking notes as I showed her the evidence I'd compiled. "This is definitely identity theft," she said when I finished. "The question is whether you want to press charges. These are serious crimes: wire fraud, identity theft, credit card fraud. Your family members could face significant jail time." I stared at her, the weight of the decision settling on my shoulders. Pressing charges would mean potentially sending my father, stepmother, and brother to prison. Not pressing charges would mean they'd gotten away with stealing from me for years. "I need to think about it," I said finally. "That's understandable, but I want you to know that you're not responsible for protecting people who have been victimizing you. You didn't choose to be a victim, they chose to make you one." I left the police station with a case number and a decision to make. On one hand, they were still my family, despite everything they'd done. On the other hand, they'd committed serious crimes against me and would likely continue if I didn't stop them. That night, I called Marcus and told him about the credit card fraud. "Sarah, you have to press charges," he said immediately. "This isn't just about the money anymore. They've committed felonies. They've stolen your identity. If you don't stop them now, they'll keep doing this to you forever." "But they're my family," I said, hating how weak I sounded. "No, they're not," Marcus replied firmly. "Family doesn't steal from you. Family doesn't commit crimes against you. Family doesn't treat you like a personal ATM and then laugh about it behind your back. These people are criminals who happen to share your DNA." He was right, but it didn't make the decision any easier. The next morning, I received a text from Tyler that made my decision for me. "Sarah, I know you're mad, but I need you to call the credit card companies and tell them you gave us permission to use those cards. Dad's freaking out because they're investigating him for fraud. Just tell them it was a misunderstanding." I stared at the message in disbelief. Even after being caught committing identity theft, he was still trying to manipulate me into protecting them. There was no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, no apology, no recognition that what they'd done was illegal. Just another attempt to make me complicit in their crimes. I screenshotted the message and forwarded it to Officer Martinez along with a note. "I want to press charges." Within hours, my phone was ringing off the hook. Dad called 17 times in a row. Janet left sobbing voicemails begging me to fix this misunderstanding. Tyler sent increasingly desperate texts, alternating between threats and pleas. I ignored them all and spent the day with Marcus, who'd taken time off work to support me through what we both knew would be a difficult day. At 3 p.m., Officer Martinez called. "We've executed search warrants at your father's residence and your stepmother's workplace. We've recovered the credit cards and documentation showing they were used without your permission. We've also found evidence of additional fraudulent activities. It looks like they've been using your personal information to apply for loans and other financial products." My stomach dropped. How much additional fraud are we talking about? "We're still investigating, but it looks like they attempted to take out a $15,000 personal loan in your name last month. The application was denied due to insufficient income verification, but the attempt is still a crime." I felt like I was going to throw up. They'd been systematically stealing my identity, probably for years, and I'd been too trusting to notice. "We're arresting all three of them today," Officer Martinez continued. "Your father and stepmother are being charged with identity theft, credit card fraud, and wire fraud. Your brother is being charged as an accessory and with conspiracy to commit fraud." The reality of what was happening hit me like a truck. My family was going to jail, because of me, because I'd finally stood up for myself and refused to be their victim anymore. "Are you okay?" Marcus asked, seeing the expression on my face. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I think I'm going to be sick." But underneath the nausea and the shock, I felt something else: relief. It was over. The manipulation, the lies, the constant financial pressure, it was all over. The local news picked up the story the next day. Family arrested for defrauding daughter out of $156,000. The reporter had somehow gotten hold of the police report and was running with the shocking details of financial abuse and identity theft. My phone exploded with messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Some were supportive, expressing shock and outrage at what my family had done to me. Others were critical, questioning why I'd involved the police in a family matter and suggesting I should have handled it privately. The most hurtful messages came from extended family members who'd been influenced by my father's version of events. My Aunt Linda left a voicemail calling me vindictive and cruel for having my own family arrested. My cousin Jennifer posted on Facebook about how some people will do anything for attention, even destroy their own family. But for every critical message, there were 3 supportive ones. My coworkers rallied around me, with several sharing their own stories of family financial abuse. My principal called to offer counseling services and assure me that my job was secure. Even some of my students' parents reached out, having heard about the situation through the local news. The legal process moved quickly. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the prospect of lengthy prison sentences, all 3 of them accepted plea deals. Dad got 18 months in prison and 5 years of probation. Janet got 12 months and 3 years of probation. Tyler, being younger and having played a smaller role, got 6 months in county jail and 2 years of probation. They were also ordered to pay restitution, though the lawyer warned me that I shouldn't expect to recover much of the money. "People who commit these kinds of crimes usually don't have assets to seize," she explained. "They've typically spent everything they stole." She was right. When all was said and done, I recovered about $8,000 from the sale of some jewelry and electronics they'd bought with my money. It was a fraction of what they'd stolen, but it was something. The months following their arrests were strange and difficult. I'd expected to feel vindicated, and I did. But I also felt grief for the family I'd thought I had, grief for the relationships I'd lost, grief for the naive person I'd been who believed that love and exploitation could coexist. I started seeing a therapist who specialized in financial abuse. Dr. Chen was a soft-spoken woman who helped me understand that what I'd experienced was a form of domestic violence, just one that society doesn't always recognize. "Financial abuse is about power and control," she explained during one of our sessions. "Your family members used your love and sense of obligation to control your behavior and access your resources. The fact that they were related to you doesn't make it less abusive, it makes it more insidious." She helped me work through the guilt I felt about having them arrested. "You didn't choose to be a victim," she reminded me repeatedly. "They chose to victimize you. The consequences they're facing are the result of their choices, not yours." Slowly, I began to rebuild my life. I used some of my recovered savings to take a trip to Italy, something I'd been dreaming about for years but had never been able to afford. I enrolled in graduate school to get my master's degree in educational leadership. I bought a small house with a garden where I could grow vegetables and flowers. Each purchase felt like an act of rebellion against the voice in my head that said I should be saving that money in case my family needed it. But my family had proven that they didn't need the money, they wanted it. And there was a big difference between the two. Marcus was incredible throughout this entire process. He stood by me when half the town was gossiping about the teacher who had her own family arrested. He celebrated with me when I got my first paycheck that I didn't have to share with anyone. He helped me paint my new house and plant my first garden. 6 months after the arrests, he proposed. It was a simple proposal, just the two of us on a hiking trail, surrounded by autumn leaves and the promise of a future built on honesty and mutual respect. "I know this has been the hardest year of your life," he said as he got down on one knee. "But I've watched you become stronger and more confident than I've ever seen you. I want to spend the rest of my life supporting your dreams instead of watching other people steal them." I said yes through tears of joy, finally understanding what it felt like to be loved without conditions or expectations. It's been 2 years since I discovered that recording, and I can honestly say it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because I enjoyed watching my family face consequences for their actions, but because it forced me to confront the reality of my situation and choose myself for the first time in my adult life. I finished my master's degree and was promoted to assistant principal at my school. I love my job and the sense of purpose it gives me. I'm helping shape young minds and creating a positive environment for learning work that feels meaningful in a way that sending money to ungrateful family members never did. Marcus and I got married last spring in a small ceremony surrounded by people who genuinely love and support us. His family welcomed me with open arms, showing me what healthy family relationships look like. They love me for who I am, not for what I can provide them. I still think about my biological family sometimes. I heard through the grapevine that Dad got out of prison last month and is working at a construction company again. Janet is living with her sister and working at a retail store. Tyler finished his sentence and is apparently trying to get into a community college program. Part of me wonders if they've learned anything from this experience. Part of me hopes they have. But I don't wonder enough to reach out. I don't hope enough to risk my peace of mind. The therapist says it's normal to have complicated feelings about cutting off family members, even when they've abused you. Love doesn't disappear just because someone has hurt you, she explained. But love without respect isn't healthy love, and you deserve relationships built on mutual respect and genuine care. She's right. I've learned that blood doesn't make family. Love, respect, and trust make family. And those things were never present in my relationships with my father, stepmother, and brother. I've also learned that setting boundaries isn't cruel, it's necessary. That protecting yourself from people who would exploit you isn't selfish, it's self-preservation. That walking away from toxicity isn't giving up, it's choosing to value yourself enough to demand better. People sometimes ask me if I regret pressing charges, if I think I went too far by having my own family arrested. The answer is always no. They committed crimes against me, serious crimes that could have destroyed my financial future completely. The fact that we shared DNA didn't give them the right to steal from me, and it didn't give me the obligation to protect them from the consequences of their actions. I'm proud of the person I've become. I'm proud of the life I've built. I'm proud of the strength I found when I needed it most. And I'm grateful for that accidental recording. It shattered my illusions about my family, but it also saved my life. It showed me that the people I'd been sacrificing everything for saw me as nothing more than a convenient source of income. It forced me to confront the reality of my situation and make the hardest decision of my life. That decision to choose myself over people who didn't value me was the beginning of everything good in my life now. My career, my marriage, my home, my peace of mind, all of it exists because I finally learned to put my own needs first. It took me 28 years to learn that lesson, but it was worth the wait. Last month, I received a letter in prison mail. The return address showed it was from my father, and for a moment, I considered throwing it away without reading it. I'd built a good life without their drama, and I didn't want to let them back into my head. But curiosity won out. I opened the letter and read, "Sarah, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to write this. I've had a lot of time to think in here, and I know I owe you an apology, a real one, not the fake ones I gave you before. I'm an addict. I'm addicted to gambling, and I used you to feed my addiction. I told myself I was just borrowing money, that I'd pay you back when my luck turned around, but I knew I was lying. I knew I was stealing from you, and I did it anyway because I was too weak to stop. Janet and Tyler were just following my lead. I'm the one who taught them how to manipulate you, how to time the requests, how to make you feel guilty if you hesitated. I'm the one who turned you into our personal ATM. I'm not writing this to ask for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I'm writing this because you deserve to know the truth and because I need to take responsibility for what I did to you. You were the best daughter any man could ask for. You were kind and generous and loving, and I took advantage of all of those beautiful qualities. I stole your money, your trust, and your peace of mind. I stole years of your life that you spent worrying about us instead of building your own future. I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry. I heard you got married and bought a house. I heard you're doing well at work and that you're happy. I'm glad. You deserve all the happiness in the world, and I'm glad you found people who love you the way you deserve to be loved. I hope someday you can forgive me, but I understand if you can't. I hope someday I can forgive myself, but I'm not there yet. Your father always, Dad, I read the letter 3 times, waiting for the familiar surge of guilt and obligation that had controlled me for so many years. But it didn't come. Instead, I felt something I hadn't expected: pity. I pitied the man who'd gambled away his relationship with his daughter. I pitied the addiction that had driven him to steal from someone who loved him. I pitied the years he'd wasted living a lie instead of getting help. But pity wasn't enough to make me want him back in my life. Acknowledgement of wrongdoing wasn't the same as making amends. An apology wasn't the same as changed behavior. I folded the letter and put it in my desk drawer, not because I was saving it, but because I wanted to remember how far I'd come. I wanted to remember the person I used to be, the one who would have read that letter and immediately started planning how to help him again. That person was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who understood that love without respect isn't love at all. I never wrote back. I didn't need to. The conversation was over, and I had won not by destroying them, but by saving myself. The next morning, I woke up in my own house, next to the man who loved me without conditions, and started planning my day around my own needs and desires. It was a small thing, but it represented everything I'd fought for: the right to live my own life on my own terms, free from the manipulation and exploitation that had defined my past. I was finally, truly free. And that was worth more than all the money in the world.